Hello, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Wednesday Night Live from Courtroom Confidential, the fastest growing true crime news channel on YouTube. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I see a lot of familiar names. Objection Cake, we chatted a little bit earlier today on our other channel while we were watching the Karen Reed case. Farm Girl and Melissa Webb, hello, and Cheryl and P. Lola's mom, and Special K and Andrew C. So many familiar faces, a lot of new names. For the new folks, if you are new to this channel tonight, I'll just introduce myself really briefly. My name is Joshua Ritter. I was a prosecutor with the district attorney's office here in Los Angeles for 10 years. And after that, I left and went into private practice as a criminal defense attorney. And I've been doing that ever since for nearly as long. And this is Courtroom Confidential, where we do our level best as much as possible to present to you both sides of the courtroom in as objective a manner as we possibly can. A lot of really interesting topics for us to get into tonight, and we have a special guest for you. So first of all, we're going to be talking about the Karen Reed case. Oh boy, everybody buckle up. Everybody take your blood pressure medication. We're going to be talking about Karen Reed, and I know that gets a lot of people dug in and a lot of people turned off even. We've gotten a lot of comments from people who are like, I am sick and tired of hearing about this case. But I hope we can talk about it in a way that brings kind of a new perspective to it, and a way where we can just analyze it like we do any case, where we're just talking about how are the lawyers doing? What is the presentation of evidence? So that is my goal. And I thought no one else would be better to chat with me about that than Scott from Recovery Addict. So he is here and he's going to be chatting with us about that. In the meantime, as we always do on Wednesday nights, we are going to be fasten your seatbelts. Yes, indeed. Deanie Mullis-Diver, fasten your seatbelts. In the meantime, we're going to run a poll. So when we're done talking about Karen Reed and we've all survived and we're wiping the mud and dirt off of ourselves, we can talk about either Lori Vallow, who just was recently convicted for the conspiracy of murder of her fourth husband. We can talk about Rex Heuermann. They just recently identified the long unidentified Jane Doe number 3, also known as Peaches. A really tragic story because she was also located with a 2-year-old, but they've identified who she is. And we can talk a little bit about the updates on that. Or there's a case that you are not going to recognize the name, I doubt, because I did not recognize the name. And it's not a case that's been all in the headlines, but I find it to be fascinating. It's a case of a gentleman on trial by the name of Joseph Koenig. And I think in the poll, even, Kaylin, we should refer to it as the rock-throwing murder, because he is standing trial for murder. Closing arguments are going to be this week for throwing rocks at moving vehicles. One of those happened to strike a vehicle in the windshield, and the young woman driving that car died. And they are charging him, and he is on trial for first-degree murder. And so we can talk about what does that mean about intent. What does that mean about conspiracy, actually, because he was with some other young men at the same time. Really interesting case. So those are the cases for the poll. Lori Vallow, Rex Heuermann, Joseph Koenig, or the rock-throwing murder. So we will put those up. Stay to the very end. Please don't go anywhere, because we do have some announcements for you of some fun things we have coming up. And as always, Arizona Gal 89 says, and thank you so much. Hello, Josh. Loving the new channel, Courtroom Confidential live trials. That's one of the things I wanted to announce, Arizona Gal 89. Thank you so much. And thank you for all you do. Don't forget to like and share. And yes, thank you, Arizona Gal 89, who has not been planted here by me, but she cues me up perfectly to say, please like this, please subscribe if you haven't. And let's get the algorithm going so that we can have an interesting conversation this evening. But I'm not going to talk any further because I know that most of you are here to see this gentleman. Hello, my friend. How are you?
I'm doing great, Josh. It's always good to be here. I'm like,
oh, good, good.
Who are you going to announce?
Yeah, right. You're looking behind you for somebody.
As well.
How have you been? Are you exhausted? You've been watching trial all day long, and it's not an easy trial to watch. It's not like something where you're just kind of laid back sipping tea.
Well, I have the benefit of not feeling the burden of prosecuting a case or defending one, so I
Yeah.
can this as a bystander without the the burden of the lawyer on my shoulder. And I've loved this case so far. I loved it. It's I was right. It's a different case than we saw the first time.
Yeah.
It's shaping up. I love all. I mean, I know people love to hate her. I like the judge. I
Yeah.
I've come to it's grown on me a little bit, the I'll allow it's and everything else. I'm really enjoying going back to this courtroom to a familiar setting, and we don't have Lally's what if any this time yet, but it's just been a lot of fun to go back and see this begin again.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you why, and I agree with you. I'll tell you why I think it's an interesting case, and it has not as much to do with the crime itself that's being alleged or the defendant, because she was really an unknown person until all of this. Even the victim, John O'Keefe, sounds like a wonderful man. He was a police officer. That sometimes usually always gets a little bit of media coverage, but why has this case taken on a life of its own? But I think part of that has to do with you have really excellent lawyering on both sides now. And I will agree with you. Yeah.
It's great.
Lally, I have nothing bad to say about that, man, because that is 90% of prosecutors in every office across this country is just kind of a very straightforward, here's the facts, presenter of evidence. But with Hank Brennan, you're really seeing kind of a new level of advocate, and he is definitely got a command of the evidence. He knows this case extremely well. And then it goes without saying, on the other side, you got David Giannetti and Alan Jackson, who's just, probably top of his game as far as criminal defense attorneys. And he's really, really putting on a masterclass in how to be a criminal defense attorney. Quite honestly, it's really remarkable stuff to watch.
Yeah, I'd agree. And I'm a big fan of Miss Little. Her brain, I wish I could get a glimpse of how she views things, because she knows all the facts. She has them all sorted. Anytime there's an issue, they consult her, and she knows where everything is, and she knows when it happened and where. So I like to see her. I like to hear her argue things as well. It takes me back to the Maya case where they had a new lawyer on the defense team there, and it's a lot of fun. But I'm excited for it. It's
I've known Liza for a long time too. I knew her, I think, soon after she passed the bar. So I was working at that same law firm where Alan is a partner. I was partners with him. Liza was a brand new associate, just had passed the bar out of law school. And the thing that she excels at is exactly what you're pointing out. She is like the walking encyclopedia of whatever case you're working on. And it frees up someone like Alan, who, listen, he knows his case forward and backward, but he doesn't have to get caught up in the minutia of on what page and what line do I need to find this testimony, because Liza knows it. And so that's why they'll be in the middle of something and everybody turns to her, because she's just this incredible resource for finding every little piece of evidence that they need to find. Yeah, I'm so glad that you recognize that.
That's a rare asset, and when we see that, that's amazing. And it really does allow a stellar team to shine. Yeah. So I can't wait to see her throughout the trial. But I'm excited. This new trial has a couple new pieces of evidence that we didn't get before, that have been teased in the open. Some digital evidence. Obviously, we've had a couple witnesses already on the stand who have testified a little differently than they did before, or we got a little more from them we heard before. And so things are shaping up differently. I'm trying to look at this through the eyes of a brand new jury who doesn't know. I mean, obviously they know that there's a new trial because they've said it like 6 times at the trial already, the previous trial. But they don't know what happened there specifically. Yeah. And so through these new eyes, I think the state, the Commonwealth, sorry, they like to be called that, is doing a good job in logically laying out the evidence and allowing the testimony to be smooth. Yes. Whereas before it seemed a little choppy and disjointed to me.
100%. He's also jumping into it a lot faster. I feel like the first trial it seemed like, it may not have been that long, but it seemed like we took weeks to get through all of the first responders and all of the medical people who were involved, and then the what happened back once he got to the hospital and all of this stuff. Whereas Brennan, who we're looking at right there, he jumps in first with one of the first responder EMTs, but then it's immediately to Carrie Roberts, who was in the car with Karen Reed that morning. So it's like we've fast forwarded past. I think he's going to get back to some of those witnesses, but it's like he's not waiting to build up to the real heart of his case. He's jumping into it, I think, a lot quicker.
He's telling a story. I think he's keeping the jury engaged mentally with that. So it's great. There's so much that I'm looking forward to that I need, from my mind to be able to reach a conclusion in this second trial. I need the state to explain, or I need the defense to explain. A lot of it's data related, and a lot of it has been viciously litigated coming up to this case, whether or not it can come in. We've got an issue with ARCA right now, which on Monday, the judge has ordered that by the 25th, that's on Friday, ARCA has to turn over their side of the communications that they've had with the defense, because she thinks, she already ruled that there was a discovery violation where they didn't turn over what they should have. And so she wants to probe the depth of that. And if she finds a problem, we could see a sanction on the defense side that could limit ARCA to what they've already disclosed in the previous trial, so they wouldn't be able to do their new findings, which should come out any day now, or maybe even exclude them altogether, which would be terrible for the defense.
I think that is like such the nuclear option that she won't do it. I think she realizes how devastating that would be to the defense case to actually prevent them from testifying. But I think she could do exactly what you're saying, is limit what they're allowed to testify to, or what findings they're allowed to use, or even give a special instruction to the jury. Hey, by the way, I found that there has been some sort of violation here, and then let them tell them what merit, what weight they should give to that, if any. But I've had judges do that before too, where they realize that it would be far too severe a remedy to actually prevent it, but they want the jurors to know that there was late disclosures, or that there were things that were done that were, she made certain findings or something like that. Yeah. But I agree with you. Koenig seems like my take on her is that there was a hearing about ARCA, you remember, weeks ago. It seemed like it was weeks ago, could have been less, but where she found that first discovery violation. She felt that the defense was being less than forthcoming with her about everything dealing with ARCA, and she found a violation. And since that point, I feel like she feels that she's given the defense a pass. Like, okay, I found this violation. I'm not going to gut your case, but I am not happy. And with this recent thing coming up, she feels like she's just, that's the breaking point for her. And I think that's why she's asking for these hearings and asking for the turning over of text messages. What is it that were you able to articulate for us what it is she feels is of this recent violation?
Well, the order says that she wants all the records within ARCA or its owners, partners, employees, or representatives' possession that in any way relate to billing, payment, compensation, or reimbursement. So she's looking at the financial connection between defense and ARCA, because there was a bill that was sent, and so she's gonna find all the details on that. I think it is a little bit of a fishing expedition, and that's a big win for the prosecution, because they think there's more there than they've been told. And if ARCA does turn something over that shows there is something more there, that's big problems for the defense. I mean, there's also this issue about text communications, right? The defense is saying that there were text messages, but they no longer exist. And now she wants to know, what does ARCA have, the other side of those conversations? All of this stuff may not be anything totally underhanded, but it gives this weird appearance to these experts that the defense didn't have the first time around. The first time around, it was like this gift had landed in their lap, that a expert hired by some independent party had come to a conclusion that was favorable for the defense. They never get that as the defense. They always are paying for their experts. Now they've got an expert paid for by somebody else who's favorable to them. It's like,
manna from heaven kind of a deal.
And it was amazing to hear that
now it's
testimony.
all got, they've paid, there's communications, there's text messages. It's all isn't going to have that same shimmer that it did the first time around.
Yeah. It's been argued back and forth in front of the judge a few times, and I think most of us can try to put the pieces together and understand it. I think defense is going to be able to explain this and why it happened the way it did to be satisfactory and avoid a sanction. But I think the judge is still mad that it had to come to this point for her to get the answers. Because they are sort of they're following the letter of the order, and you only said emails. You didn't say anything about text, so we turned over the emails. We turned over extra emails,
right?
But it's a game that's played, as you know, in the courtroom often, and
yeah, and I do know too, the judges really don't like to feel like games are being played with them, though. It's like they don't mind you being an advocate, and they don't mind you kind of structuring your arguments and your cross-exam. When you start to do stuff with the judge directly that it feels like you're maybe being too cute by half, that's where they start to get upset. And I think that's where she's at this point.
Yeah. So Monday's going to be fireworks.
Yeah.
One way or another.
So tell me, she moved, because I heard this today, that they don't have the experts available for Thursday or Friday because she wanted the hearing on Friday. Now they're going to go half a day Friday and have the hearing or the voir dire on Monday. Is that what's happening?
Yeah. Well, she already promised the jury a half day on Friday, so she has to stand by that.
Okay.
It was going to be just let them not come in at all on Friday, and we'll do ARCA instead for half a day. The jury gets Friday off. Now with ARCA being, I believe, in Pennsylvania, they're out of state. They say we're not available to be there that day. It sounds like they can be there on Monday. Now we're going to have the jury come back in, have witnesses, just regular witnesses called, and proceed with the case in chief, and then take ARCA and push the hearing till Monday for half a day, and then continue with witnesses. So it'll probably be an early out for the jury on Monday, I'm thinking.
Gotcha. Johnny Knoxville, hello, my friend. Thank you so much. I made it on time this week. I hit the thumbs up. Thank you. Appreciate you for being here, and appreciate you for putting it in your calendar so that you were able to make it here. I am curious to hear your thoughts, Scott, because we are so early on, about the opening statements to begin with. What was your takeaway from those? How did you feel after those opening statements?
I actually think that Hank Brennan did a fabulous job telling the story, that using that narrative form, interspersing in or injecting in it precise dates and times and temperature measurements and, bits of facts, but also, leading us along in a narrative type format like that was effective for me. I really thought after he was done, I said, wow, defense has their hands full this time around. We've got a very talented prosecutor who knows what he's doing and knows how to talk to the jury. Yep. Which I think is very important, because that's the only time he gets to really talk to the jury, and he's drawn them in. And so as soon as he sat down, I'm like, wow, this is going to be good. This is going to be better for sure. And obviously, him mentioning the new data about the Apple Watch with the heart rate measurements for Jen McCabe, and the battery temperature sensor on John's phone that will show exactly when the temperature changed on the phone and when it was outside in the cold, and when it was picked up. That's going to be just amazing. To plug into the existing information we already have, that's already got timestamps from the car records, from the satellite downlink, everyone else's text messages. All these pieces are going to come together and maybe fill out the puzzle a little more than it did last time. Because last time, the way they told the story, it just didn't fit for me. I couldn't see what they said was happening, having actually occurred. And they have the same set of facts. So I'm not sure if they'll be able to win me over that way or not, but I like how they're starting.
Listen, he's not going to light the world on fire, right? He's not like, he doesn't like hop off of the screen like an Alan Jackson and just, have you on the edge of your seat. But he did a couple of things that I thought were really, really good. The first was, I loved how he started. There's a term in storytelling called in medias res, where you begin in the middle of the story. And that's where he began. If you remember, his opening words were about the firefighters receiving an alarm that they had to go out to this scene because a person was unconscious. And I loved that. It wasn't, Karen Reed is a professor, and she, began and met John O'Keefe, and then they dated and blah, blah. Like, he starts in the middle of the action, which was very engaging. The other thing I thought that was really remarkable was his whole opening was extemporaneous. He didn't look at one note. He knew exact times. He knew figures. He knew that the gas pedal was pressed at 75% of full capacity. He was recalling these things as he's giving this narrative of the whole story. I thought it was impressive. I know I can already see the chat. There's a lot of people giving me the blah face on him, but I think in all fairness, he deserves a little bit of kudos where they're deserred.
Yeah, I agree. Now flip to the other side on defense.
Yeah, please, Alan Jackson.
If Brennan hit, got a 2-run, a 2-base hit. Yeah. Alan Jackson hit a grand slam with his open, and he was using notes, but he uses them so effectively. Yeah. And I mean, getting up there last time in the first trial, he got up and he said infamously, Karen Reed was framed. And that was, the big, I mean, he swung for the fences from the get-go. And here he started almost, with, you're going to hear 3 things. There was no collision. There was no collision. There was no collision. Yeah. And so he had that same sort of style, but a completely different delivery. And just, having just watched Brennan, I thought that was good. I watched Alan Jackson and said that was great. Yeah. That was absolutely great.
There are very few attorneys that I think could have followed Brennan and really made you forget about Brennan's opening. And you're looking at one of them. Yeah. He really, there's very few lawyers that he cannot follow, and there are very few lawyers that could have been able to follow this had the order gone in reverse. He is just this is just one of the things that he's very talented at. Is he's a very dynamic speaker. He has a natural way of adding drama to what he was saying. One thing I thought, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this, one thing that stood out to me a little bit was he seemed indignant during his opening. It was like there was like this air of not anger, but just absolute indignation. And I'm trying to see as jurors, how did that play with them? Because he's coming from a standpoint of my client's a completely innocent person being railroaded by the government and everybody else. So from one perspective, you understand that, but I'm wondering do you think that played with the jury?
I think it did. I think they definitely felt that here's a lawyer who 100% believes that his client has been wronged and is a victim of the government here. Yeah. And he told that story beautifully. And he did this. If you look back at that morning, there had just been motions ruled on that stripped ARCA from his opening statement. He wasn't allowed to mention that. The judge had ruled he's severely limited his ability to talk about a third-party culprit in his open. And this is like, right before kickoff time.
Minutes before he's about to begin.
Yes. And he just I thought now he's in trouble. Because that's going to be key. I know how much they depended on ARCA during the first trial, and all he just said is the science, the data, the facts they're going to show. And he took that same thing and said, we're going to not just tell you that it's possible. We're going to prove to you that there was no collision. And I'm like, wow. I mean, it leaves me with chills just listening to it, just how he did it.
That was something also very clever that he did, because Brennan focused on, one of his themes was this prosecution is guided by the science and the data. And Alan gets up and says, we're going to prove everything they're saying is wrong, and we'll do it by science and data. And I was like, that's exactly what you want to do. Is we're not running from it. We're not hiding from it. We're using it to explain why our client is innocent. Yeah. Really remarkable stuff on both sides.
I'm ready for it. I've got my Stop and Shop evidence bag right here. I'm going to start collecting little pieces of evidence throughout
you're giving me PTSD flashbacks of what we've got in store for us.
No, it's gonna be wild.
One thing though we'll talk a little bit about some of the witnesses that have come up, but today the fireworks really began with the testimony of Carrie Roberts, who was one of the women that was with Karen Reed the morning that the body is discovered. So, everybody kind of knows this story, and I don't want to retell it for fear that I'll get attacked by somebody saying I've got it wrong. But essentially, Karen wakes up, contacts friends of hers and says, we got to go out and find John. And one of those friends is Carrie Roberts. And Carrie Roberts is retelling the story of discovering John's body, of calling first responders. But then it gets into this point where there's a discussion on whether or not she overheard any discussion about a search done on the cell phone for how long to die in the cold, or what are the effects of hypothermia? Can you walk through us some of that?
Basically, in her grand jury testimony, she was asked by Adam Lally, what do you know as far as what was said, about this search was asked that you heard. Adam Lally added that you heard to it. And she testified in that hearing that she heard Karen Reed asked Jen McCabe to search on the phone, basically how long to die in the cold. Hypothermia, Google hypothermia, how long to die, that sort of thing. The defense jumped on that because the question, if you read it from the transcript, says that you heard.
Right.
And he extracted from her that she did not hear it. She
Right.
never heard that. The only thing she's heard that from is from Jen McCabe, which we also found out that they sat down and put their stories together. They built a timeline. They filled in, I have this piece, you have this piece, and together they built a timeline of what happened that morning. And she admitted that, yes, that influences my memory of what happened.
And Jen McCabe is certainly starting to take on this kind of ominous role in all of this because she's being referred to so many times by the defense, though she has not testified yet. I want to show you, it's only a few minutes long. This is the recross of Jen McCabe when they were talking about that exact issue that you just flagged for us. So let me just pull this up here. And by the way, I'm pulling this video from our brand new channel, Courtroom Confidential Live Trials. So check it out, everybody. But anyhow, we'll get into that in a bit. But here, and I'm going to let this play through because I want to ask you about your thoughts on how Alan handled this bit of cross-examination here.
There's no further questions.
Okay, so recross.
Just asked just a few minutes ago. Did you ever say that you actually heard that statement about that Google search? You said no.
Correct.
The question that was posed to you by Mr. Lally was, what, if anything, did she, Miss Reed, ask Miss McCabe while they were sitting in the back of the cruiser that you heard?
Right.
Correct?
I misunderstood the question.
And you misunderstood that question?
Yes.
What did you misunderstand about that question?
I didn't know it was that you heard, so I was explaining what happened in the back of the car.
I see. So you just ignored the part, literally, the part of the question where he said, what did you hear her say? That's what your testimony is now?
Heard, and I didn't hear it. I obviously got the question wrong because I did not hear anybody ask about a Google search.
Well, I know that's what you're saying now. I get that. But when you were asked, what, if anything, did she ask Miss McCabe while they were sitting in the back of the cruiser that you heard, your immediate answer was, at one point, she asked her to Google hypothermia and how long - Google hypothermia, end quote. Correct?
Correct.
That was your answer.
Yes.
Correct?
To a question I misunderstood.
And that was a false statement, wasn't it?
Technically.
Technically,
Yes,
it's like being a little
technically.
bit pregnant, Ms. Roberts.
Okay, so remember, jurors, I said earlier, comments of counsel are not.
Just in case you guys missed this, what he says there is he goes, you lied, and she goes, technically, and he says technically, and she starts to speak over him, and he says that's like being a little bit pregnant, and that's where the judge jumps in and says, all right, behave.
Evidence and you're to disregard them. Ask a question.
Thank you, Your Honor. What do you mean technically?
Technically, I was under oath and I did not hear Karen asked Jen to Google it,
And yet under oath,
but I knew it happened at that
and yet
time.
under oath, you said you did.
Correct.
And that was a lie, correct?
Yes.
Was that a lie? Did you lie?
I did not intentionally.
But you did.
There's a Sarah Boone moment there.
Intentionally.
Okay, that's the end of
Understood
this.
the question, Mr. Jackson.
All right, is there any other question or is that it?
I didn't hear what you just said.
I said I misunderstood the question, Mr. Jackson.
That's what you're saying now, correct?
That's what happened.
All right,
Can I ask one more question?
okay.
In that quote, you said, at one point she asked her to Google hypothermia and how long. Then you corrected yourself and finished with Google hypothermia. What did you mean by how long? What were you about to say?
I don't recall.
If someone told you something about a phrase that started with how long?
I don't recall.
Hypothermia?
I don't recall.
Like, for instance, how long to die in cold?
I don't recall.
Okay. All right, Ms. McKay.
That
First of all, I feel like I need to like dab my brow.
yeah.
With, like I'm pulling out a handkerchief and just dabbing myself. That was an intense exchange between the two of them. Give me your reaction. You're trying to go into this as a juror, as a fresh set of eyes. This is the first time you're hearing this evidence in this trial. What was your reaction to that?
Well, every time she said, I don't recall, it was to the defense. And every time she was asked questions that she didn't remember, it was, the prosecution. So that does count against her credibility score if we're keeping points. That magic, I don't recall, it stops the line of questioning, to a great extent. You can't go any further. She doesn't recall. You can't ask her more questions. She doesn't recall. Even if you read the transcript, she can't remember it. So that does look really bad on her, and having to end like that, I think was, masterful by AJ to have that be the last impression the jury hears as he goes to sit down. I think that she could have done a better job explaining it instead of saying, I misunderstood the question. Because if you justifies, she's rapid fire. There's no pause between a question and answer for anyone. Like that's no sooner is there a punctuation mark on the end of the sentence than she's starting her answer.
Yeah.
And we have a transcript that shows that Adam Lally was asking a question as she starts answering, but we don't know how far those overlapped. That you heard might have literally been over the beginning of her sentence, and the transcript can't show us that. So I think they could have had a better explanation, saying that I heard this from Jennifer McCabe.
I don't think she saw it coming. I don't think the prosecution really realized that kind of laser focused attention to that question and answer exchange during the grand jury would have become this kind of moment that it turned into in the hands of Alan, right? I mean, he made that moment as impactful as it did. But what do you think about, I mean, he came after her hard on that. Do you think, because I've always said this, you can go after a witness as hard as you want if you feel like that witness has given you permission. In other words, if they're coming back at you and they're not answering questions and they're being evasive and they're being cute, you can have at it with them. Do you think that, because we only showed this clip, do you think he had arrived at that point with her?
Yeah, I think it's fair game because we had new testimony. We had testimony that was different, specifically about the size of the missing piece on the car. The first time she testified in court, she actually held up her hand to say a piece was missing, and it gave the impression that it was a small piece. And this time she says, no, the whole square middle section, everything was gone. So I think that that new testimony that came out added to the fact that she was not cross-examined in the first trial. They said no questions.
Very good point.
She might have expected to just be done. It's like, for some reason, they don't want any piece of me. And then he gets up and grills her.
Yeah.
So it was.
I was thinking about that too. Like, she is not used to this. She got out easy the first time around, and boy, even her demeanor there at the end, you could tell that she's, you know.
Oh, it was testy. It was the
she
tension
has
in the air.
removed Alan Jackson from her Christmas card list.
Yeah,
that is for
more
sure.
It was interesting because the next witness, Peggy, who testified, when she was done on direct and went to cross, you could see just like there was a fear factor that was present there. She's like, oh no, now it's Alan Jackson's turn. And when he said, you know, I expressed my condolences and I have no questions, it just, the weight melted off her shoulders. I mean, he is a force to be reckoned with, and any witness that has to face cross-examination from him should be worried.
Yeah. Well, but he's also smart enough to know you're not going to score points with anybody going after the mother of the dead man here. I mean, that was a smart move. One last thing, and then I want to take some questions if you've got some time with us. One huge pivot in the prosecution's approach to this case has been the use of Karen Reed's media and Karen Reed's interviews. And already we've seen a couple of clips. He played a clip in opening. He's played a clip now. And it's interesting too, because he's just kind of playing these things in between witnesses.
Like an intermission.
It's weird. It's like, like chapters or something, which I'm used to, that you have to bring in, you know, like some sort of custodian of records or something like that to lay the foundation for all of this. But, you know, the judge is allowing this, and the defense seems to not be losing the brain about it. But what do you think of so far his use of these interviews? Just that kind of cold question.
Well, the fact that some of these are mere seconds long implies they're taken out of context. You just know, you want to know what came before and you want to know what comes after, and so that's there. I'm looking at this. I'm saying, why is the state able to object under the rule of completeness and say get it all in? Because you know this is an out of court statement for them. This would be hearsay. They can't admit her statement. But they're just playing little pieces that make them look bad, that unless she gets up on the stand and testifies, they're not going to be able to correct in this trial.
Right.
And so I don't know how the rule of completeness works up there in the Boston area. But
I think it works like it does anywhere. And I think you're right. If they wanted to, they could say, well, we want the entire context of that clip, but maybe they don't. Maybe they're also like, you know what? We don't want to feed into this as much as we can, because
she doesn't look good in some of these videos.
That's I think the end of the day is they really don't want to draw attention to these clips. They're not helpful.
Yeah. I mean, I want to give her all the credit, assuming that she's innocent, as the jury should feel. But you know, at the beginning of this case, here's somebody who's wrongfully accused. Would you be mad about it? Yeah. Would you want to tell people about it? Yeah. But her presentation does not, you know, it's not Miss America, perfect posture and answer, and here's the correct answer. It's not that. And so they take the clips where, you know, you look at the worst. There's the burn pile case where I was mentioned by the defense, and they took a screenshot from my live stream and entered it in evidence. And they got some shot where I'm like, you know, I'm making this face. I'm like, that's the moment that they chose. And I only made that once ever. And it was like, as I'm turning and somebody surprised me. I don't know what it was, but I feel like they've done that to Karen Reed. They've taken the parts that they can make her look the worst they possibly can, and are playing that as an intermission. That's just a reminder. And they have, I don't know, 60 of these.
Yeah.
One between every witness.
One thing I thought about this that I haven't heard a lot of people talk, and I want to hear what you think, is that what's so unique about these media clips, and we're looking at a freeze frame from one of them now, and this kind of illustrates my point, is that these are not on the courtroom steps, stopped by a interviewer, throws a microphone in front of her face, and she gets some kind of off the cuff comment. These are sit down, lights and cameras, hair and makeup, 3 different camera angle setups for interviews. And I'm curious, how will that play with the jury? Is the jury going to look at this? And if they don't, hopefully these are jurors that have been honest and haven't followed this thing, but are they going to look at this and go, wait a minute, you're telling me this lady was sitting down with and doing documentaries and 2020 interviews and everything else since the time that this guy was killed? I'm curious if that will have some sort of collateral effect in all of this.
Well, look at the public outside of this courtroom that has watched these, for years, have followed this case and heard these out of court statements and watched the interviews and watched the specials on this. A lot of them have seen all this and are staunchly on Karen's side and even supporting her financially, saying, how can we help your defense? What's happening here is wrong. So I think that the jurors will fall on both sides like they have in public, that some people will look at this and say, this was corruption at its finest. This is boss, Canton cop corruption. And others will look at this and say, she's as guilty as the day is long.
Yeah. Yeah. You might be right. Can we take some questions here?
Yeah.
All right. Terry L says, and this is talking about opening statements. What do you think about him? And I think she means Hank Brennan leaving Proctor out of the opening statement. This is a great question. I wondered about this.
This is the elephant in the room. At some point, he has to be mentioned. I think it was mentioned a little bit today. Was the first time that Hank Brennan actually brought up his name as far as somebody who did some investigation or met with someone. But there's a point where the prosecution has to own this because of the role he played. They can't just ignore it. They don't have a case without what he did. They don't have some evidence without what he did.
He's the lead investigator.
Yeah. And he found a lot of stuff, apparently. At least that's the story. So at some point they have to handle it. I wonder how they do that, because they didn't lay the foundation in the open for what we were expecting to hear. I think it would be foolish of them to present him as a police officer or lead investigator and not address the fact that he was in fact terminated for wrongful conduct, just like defense mentioned in their open. And they have to get ahead of that so they don't let defense score those points. But how they do that, that's going to be interesting to see.
Yeah. I actually think this was a real missed opportunity by the Commonwealth to not bring him up in their opening. I firmly believe that the smarter strategy would have been to steal some of the defense's thunder and say, listen, and by the way, the investigation was led by, much of the evidence was collected by, most of the interviews were people were interviewed by an individual you're going to hear a lot from, and his name is Michael Proctor. And let me tell you about him, and just throw him under the bus and then say, but none of that changes the actual evidence as it was, and just kind of try to steal that thunder. But he didn't. In fact, he didn't even mention his name. And then Alan gets up and say, by the way, you never heard this person's name exit his mouth, and I'll tell you why. And it just made it sound even more ominous and awful.
It was so good.
Yeah,
it was great. So yeah, I think it was a mistake on the part of the prosecution, but defense will not miss an opportunity to capitalize. This is one. If you want to see AJ go hard or Yannetti go hard, it's going to be anything to do with Michael Proctor.
Oh,
they're gonna score every point they possibly can there, and it will be excruciating and painful and awkward, and like it was in the last one. They're gonna, some bad words are gonna be said on TV. Come out of his mouth.
The traditional view is that a retrial favors the prosecution because it's like they've taken a bit away the surprise that the defense might have as their advantage. This case is different though, because of that gentleman right there, because him having been fired in connection to all of this, it really changes the odds, in my view, as far as who's got an advantage in this time around. But we shall see. Here's an interesting one, and you were talking to me a little bit about this, and you mentioned this earlier. Have you ever heard of battery temp being used before? This is new to me. It's new to me, Crystal DeSaro. Where are they going with that?
This is battery temp. This is one of those things where technology advancing is changing the way courts use evidence. Our phones are supercomputers, and they track everything from the orientation to the charge rates. When everything you can possibly think of is stored in vast logs inside your phone, and one of those is the battery temperature. It's used to track if it's charging properly, if it's overheating, if your phone's in the sun, your phone might shut down. Those logs can be found and used. I've never heard of a case before where they use that as evidence or to prove a timeline. So this is the first time I've heard that, but I don't think it'll be the last. Because this, it's fascinating. This is data that is that's able to be extracted using Celebrite or Gray Key. I can't remember what the other one was. Some of that software, they can pull that log out, get all those timestamps, spread it out on paper, and say, now what happened? Show me what on a graph, on a timeline. Show me what happened with this phone, and it can help build a picture of something where normally you wouldn't have data. You don't have video. You don't know what happened during that time. The phone's going to tell that story now.
Yeah. Wow. Fascinating stuff. For a case, honestly, had this not blown up into the case that it blew up into, with all of the media attention and the high profile attorneys and everybody attached to it, this would be a case that would be handled in any courtroom in Main Street, USA, and nobody would have ever heard about it. And it would have taken about a week long to handle it. And all of this other stuff and the text messages and destroyed phones and battery temperatures and all that stuff would not make its way into this, but it's turned into this. It's fascinating.
There are a couple people that deserve some credit there, and you can love them or you can hate them, but Turtle Boy, right, with a very unique style, deserves a lot of credit for getting this on the radar for people.
Yeah,
if we're shouting this from the rooftops, and you might end up getting in trouble for some of the stuff he did, or see how that plays out. But you got to give him credit for that.
No, you did 100%. That is a factor that it does. Otherwise, it's really without explanation to me why it turned into what it did. Last thing on this is Mr. Fixit says, do you think Brennan is trying to bait her into taking the stand? Which is an interesting theory, Mr. Fixit, but it also begs the question, do you think there's any way she ever takes the stand in this case?
I don't think she does. I think she has a defense team that is better suited for going to battle against Brennan head to head than she is. We know that because we've got video of her being interviewed by reporters and maybe not saying things artfully or saying things in a way that paints her in the best light. And you can imagine with a skilled prosecutor shaping the questions and the direction of the conversation, how that could end so badly for her if she's not careful. And so I don't think she'll take the stand. Yes, I think he would love for her to get up there and just to all those little video clips, that is bait. I think he definitely is baiting her, but I don't think she'll do it.
I agree with you. I didn't think about it that way, that he's baiting her. I just thought that he's trying to use all the ammunition he's been given, but it might be, I'm going to continue doing this, lady, until you actually come up here and testify, but we shall see. Ali B from Tennessee. Since when is it normal to do police interviews around the family dining room table like Jen's house with the interview headquarters versus police station, no notes, recording, etc.? Shady. Ali B from Tennessee. Is it unprofessional? Perhaps. Is it extraordinary? Arguably. You would be surprised, Ali B from Tennessee, and believe me, in no way am I trying to defend the police behavior in this case. But I have been doing this long enough to know interviews take place everywhere, in squad cars, on the street, in the family home, at the police station. There are plenty of things in this case that I think were done very poorly and very roughshod and very thrown together you know, stop and shop bags and red Solo cups included, that I think the least of their worries was whether or not they interviewed some of these people around the family dining room table. But I appreciate your question, Ali B from Tennessee. Thank you so much. Let's move on because I want to talk about some other stuff tonight. I don't know what the results of the poll are, Kaylin, but can I pull an executive decision here and say that we keep Scott around for just one more of our poll questions? Because I'm curious to get his thoughts on the Lori Vallow case. What did win our poll? Just so I know. She's given me the 1 minute, and everybody tells me to be nice to Kaylin. I'm very nice to Kaylin.
I need to know now.
I know. 41% Heuermann. Okay, we will definitely talk about Heuermann, but I want to get Scott, while I have you here, your thoughts on the Lori Vallow case really quickly, because I know that you had followed that case a little bit.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious your thoughts and reactions to, you know, we put on this whole trial. She defends herself. I was fully expecting her to testify, and then she didn't. And they deliberated for 3 hours before they find her guilty of murder. What was just give me your kind of gut reaction to everything.
Well, this I'll just say that I'm still batting 100 when it comes to the number of cases that do not convince me to defend myself pro se in a murder trial.
Yeah.
Lori Learns to Lawyer was not the successful hit that she thought it would be this time.
Yeah.
She had standby lawyers. I don't think she used them to the full extent that she could have in this trial, although I think they did a lot of help on some of the questioning. Yeah, this was a poor decision on my part, but I think it was good for her in what she wants to accomplish, because I think this was her building a little black book of names of people of what happened, because she still has questions. She doesn't know how this all went down and she got caught and everything. And she was digging to find out who had wronged her, who had told, who had turned on her. And this was personal for her.
Yeah.
And
it's a really good point.
That was
may have been, this whole circus may have been more about her personal curiosities than it was about her even trying to prove her own innocence.
She was more upset that one of the witnesses didn't remember her green chili enchiladas than she was about, trying to fight off the aggravation charge, which she stipulated to.
And I hear that you make a mean green chili enchilada.
They are killer.
I've heard about this.
They are killer. And you finish it off with a little bit of throat punch that my wife makes, and it's delicious.
I do want to show you something, though, that another YouTube creator had put up today. Mm-hmm. It's a clip from Fox Local in Arizona, and it's an interview with one of the jurors right after the guilty verdict came out. And the creator is Joe Schmo. So I want to give him a shout out for letting us use this clip, because he put up some captions. But I'm going to play it for you. It's very short, but I want to concentrate on one thing that he says about learning about Lori's prior convictions. And we'll get into this. I don't want to set it up any more than I need to. So let me just put this up here. What am I doing? Okay. I figured it out. Actually, can you guys see that okay? Or maybe I should do it like this. Here we go.
Yeah. Do you remember your reaction learning that she has been convicted in killing her two children?
I feel sorry for her. I mean, driving home yesterday, I was like, God, she's spending the next 3 lives in prison in a cell. I mean, you got to feel sorry for her, even though, I mean, that's awful thing to do. I mean, there's something wrong up here, but what he said, still, you just feel awful about it.
Wow.
So if you guys, caught that, it kind of went by quickly, but Joe put up those captions, which were very helpful. But he says, and this is supposedly the day that the verdict came out, he says, when I was driving in my car yesterday, I was thinking about how she's serving these life sentences, which to me, obviously you're kind of doing the same math I'm doing. Does that mean he was aware of these convictions? Right. Shore Life Creation says, how did he know yesterday?
Arizona, we may have a problem. That's
right.
where we're at. This would be terrible to redo a case at this point for everybody. It's terrible for the state financially. It's terrible for for Kay, for the family, everyone who'd have to testify again if this had to repeat, because we have a juror who potentially had some information that he should not have had at the time when he had. It appears that he had it. I don't know the facts. I'd have to see when the time frame was of this interview. He might have walked out of court, pulled up his phone, and Googled Lori Vallow on the way down the steps. But the way he told the story, it sounds like he knew beforehand that she was serving 3 life sentences, which probably involved a Google search, probably involved some sort of watching of news or reading the story. That's one of the things the judges say you cannot do. You can't consider that. And they spend a lot of time and effort and money picking a jury that doesn't have that baggage from that previous knowledge.
I saw that Joe Schmo was in the chat, so I want to give him a shout out and thank you again for allowing us to use that clip and for putting that together. I agree with you, Scott. There he is. Thank you, Joe. I agree with you. First of all, I think we need to say, this is a clip caught. We don't know the full context. We don't know if that man misspoke, what he was talking about, what he meant by that, all of that. So I don't want to light everything on fire, not realizing the full context of what he was saying. But if I am a defense attorney watching that, I'm losing my mind, right? I'm saying, wait a second, did I just hear what I heard? This guy knew about the prior convictions at the time that they were deliberating this case.
Yeah. And it doesn't matter that he feels sorry for her.
Right.
Because the fact is he knew that she was convicted of murder.
Right. But then the defense attorney is sitting right there. She's in jail. She's not watching this video clip. She's not seeing these interviews. Maybe they're getting TV and maybe she's watching all the media on herself that she can, or maybe her appellate attorneys are watching it. But when Tiffany showed me this clip, I immediately thought, she said, is that a problem? And I said, that's a huge problem. That's a huge problem, because you're right. Had they asked people, have you ever heard about her before? And they said, yes, I have, but I carry no bias. That would be one thing. But if these are people who say, I have no idea about these prior cases, and then had gone about actually looking it up, that is a major problem. And that is something that even could be grounds for a retrial, for a mistrial and retrial in this case. Crazy stuff. I don't know. We'll see if anything comes of it, but it was just an interesting thing that I wanted to run by you tonight while I had you here.
Yeah, that was a crazy case to watch. Absolutely. I will say that Lori, probably with the help for her standby counsel, did a better job at being pro se than many pro se defendants. Yeah. As far as understanding the process, even though she didn't understand some of the definitions of key words like hearsay. Hearsay is not just a question that has a yes or no answer. She had to be educated through the court process. But she did better than most, probably because she's spent more time in court than most pro se defendants. But still, this is not when it's something so personal, especially. I mean, maybe if you want to represent yourself for a traffic ticket, go for it, but where your life's on the line or your freedom's on the line, I'd call a lawyer.
Yeah.
They're better.
I actually think that her representing herself backfired her in a more catastrophic way than she realizes, because she wasn't so awful. Had she been really awful, she may have garnered some sympathy on the part of the jury. They may have looked and been like, this lady doesn't know what she's doing, but she's up here trying to represent herself. We're going to give her a little bit of benefit of the doubt. But she was just good enough, I think, for them to go, okay, we're not giving you any extra points here. You kind of know what you're doing, so we're going to judge your performance as if we would any other defense attorney. But then she was just bad enough to not effectively defend herself. She fell into this like kind of sweet spot of awfulness.
Yeah, she did. There were objections. The prosecution led throughout that trial, and it was I mean, it was not just blatant. It was glaringly obvious that they were leading on almost every question with almost every witness, and Lori didn't object. And
No.
you know, if you don't object, there's no foul, and the judge just let it run.
You know what it was? That whole trial was a dumpster fire, which leads me to show you this, which I received from Tio Toys or Tio Toys. I'm sorry, Phil, if I'm pronouncing it wrong, but he sent me this. And I think it's fantastic because we have a saying here that when you light a dumpster on fire is when you get hot garbage. And so that's where that all came from. So thank you so much, Phil and Tio Toys, for sending that. I appreciate that. He is the best. Scott, and you are also the best. Thank you so much for your time tonight. Thank you so much for your insights and sharing all of that with us.
Anytime.
Tell everybody, are you all Karen Reed for the next few weeks here? What's going on?
We are gavel to gavel Karen Reed till the end. So we're going to be staying there. Obviously, the next big trial after that it's going to be Koberger. So we'll have a month or two of downtime.
Oh, man. Yeah.
But this is just a crazy year for big trials. And this is going to be a great one. I've tried to tell people I'm trying to watch this, and it's hard. I'm trying to watch this Karen Reed trial as if I was a juror who didn't know anything about the trial. And so I'm that's my effort, and I fail miserably at it, but that's my goal, and love to have you watch.
Me too. And I think that is the way to do it, because that is the way it's playing out, by the way, because any ground gained or lost during that first trial does not matter now. As good a performance as the defense may have done the first time around does not score them any points this time around. And as poor a performance as you might have think the prosecution did the first time around doesn't matter, because it's all a new ball game here. Day. So yeah, best way to be viewing it. All right, Scott, thank you again. Thank you. Everybody, if you don't already, go check out and subscribe to Recovery Addict. Highly appreciate all your support, my friend.
Have a good night. Thank you.
All right, take care. Where'd she come from? All right. Josh Hutchins says RA is the best. He absolutely is. Thank you so much for that super chat, Josh. Canoni's Baloney, best name, says the juror may not have known beforehand, but one of the others did and shared it with the rest as soon as they went to deliberate. I think that explains why they went home as early that day too. I hope you're wrong. I really hope you're wrong, because if you're right and that all comes out, then you're looking at trial number 2 with Lori Vallow out of Arizona, which would be a real miscarriage of justice in my view. But God, I hope that's not true. I can't imagine that juror being so upfront about it too, being interviewed, and just kind of not even realizing that was a problem if it actually was a problem. So we will see how that all plays out. But crazy stuff. All right. Should we get into Rex Heuermann, the latest on Rex Heuermann? I know that won the poll. So what happened is not so much a development in his case, but in the investigation surrounding his case. Rex Heuermann is currently charged with 7 murders. There were 10 total bodies recovered in that same general area of Gilgo Beach. Of those, 7 had been identified, and he had been charged with all 7. There was a female spoken of, identified only as Jane Doe 3, or what commonly she was referred to as Peaches before this point, because of this tattoo. The only kind of identifying feature that they could release was the idea that there was this peach tattoo. So she had been referred to as Peaches. The very, very sad part of all of it, and I'll just give you a quick background. Absolutely, rest in peace. That's Alicia K. Mayo sending those well wishes. Is in 1997, a dismembered torso was found on Hempstead Lake State Park. Part of that torso included this tattoo that you're seeing there. more disturbing than that, if that wasn't already disturbing, were the skeletal remains of a child that at that point they could only identify as being between the ages of 16 and 24 months, were found in 2011, so several years later, in Jones Beach State Park. Why am I bringing up those two things? Because through DNA, though they were not able to identify either Peaches or the young child, female child, they were able to, through DNA, identify that Peaches was the mother of that child. So now you had two unidentified bodies connected to the same general location of where the rest of the Gilgo serial killer Rex Heuermann victims were recovered from. And now they have recently been able to identify these bodies. And the mother is a woman by the name of Tanya Denise Jackson. And her daughter, that beautiful baby girl there, was Tatiana Marie Dykes. And what we know, what's been released by the media as early as today and yesterday, was that she was, or I think it was actually even today, she was born in Alabama. She served in the Army, actually. And she had most recently lived in Brooklyn as a medical assistant. And the really sad thing about all of this is that she was not reported missing for some period of time because she had kind of an estranged relationship with her family. So this was just kind of a forgotten person who was raising this child and met a very violent end. Now, investigators are not saying whether or not she actually is a Rex Heuermann victim, which is interesting at this time. What they are, this is the statement from Captain Fitzpatrick. I'm not saying it is him. I'm not saying it's not him. What that means to me is they're continuing to try to investigate, but they have certainly not found evidence to exclude him, right? Had they found evidence that they believed that her death, their death, was at the hands of someone else, I think they would have said that. But finding no evidence to exclude him, that means that he is still probably their primary suspect in all of this. So that brings now the number of identified bodies to 9. And that leaves just one unidentified body, which is an Asian male, interestingly, found dressed in women's clothing at the time. And so the running theory of investigators was perhaps this also was a victim of the same killer responsible for all the other deaths, who was preying upon females who, you know, I'm trying to find the most delicate way of saying, but they had all been allegedly tied or believed to be tied to the sex industry, and that this person, this unidentified male Asian, may have also been doing the same, but posing as a female. Anyhow, when this case first began, and by the way, we just to kind of give a plug for the work that we've done here on Courtroom Confidential, we did do a case notes episode on this where we went into all of these cases and the investigation and everything else, and we encourage you guys to check that out. We'll put the link in the description of this video. But it is a case that is remarkable for many, many reasons, but one of those is that when they started to discover all these bodies, I think there was a lot of question about, they believed it could have been all connected to someone, but how could it possibly be connected to someone? Or did they just happen upon a dumping ground where other active killers had put people? But now we are down to 7 out of the 10 bodies they've discovered can be linked to this person, according to investigators. 2 more have I've been identified, and they're asking for help from the public to see if there's maybe further evidence that they can use to tie, I guess, Rex Heuermann to these deaths. And then this one unidentified male Asian that they're still working on. So, if you saw a recent documentary that came out about this case, there was a lot of really bad corruption and horrible stuff attendant to the investigation the investigators and the department when this first all began. They have since then cleaned house, and I really applaud the work that's been done since then by the new set of investigators and new department. For it sounds like they're going to bring this man to justice on, at least at this point, before this even ends, 7 out of the 10 bodies that they've recovered in that same area. So crazy development in that case. Let me see if we got some questions on this one. Do you have any questions, Kaylin, that you saw? Yeah, here's one from JC. Oh, I'm sorry. Here's one from JC Broadway says, are they still saying that Shanna Gilbert wasn't one of his victims? They are. And that's the JC Broadway brings up an interesting point. Shannon Gilbert is kind of how this all began. When she went missing is really what caused her mother, in pursuit of trying to figure out what had happened to her daughter, is what really started to open this case up. And in a search for Shannon is when a canine team discovered the first bodies, which then became part of the eventual Gilgo 4, which has now turned into the Gilgo 7, attached to Rex Heuermann. So the way that the investigation has, I don't know if you want to call it concluded, but the current running theory is that Shannon was not a victim of his, but may have met a tragic end in a different way. And I that's kind of as far as I want to go with it, because I don't want to misstate where the investigation has led us. Sorry, Kaylin, if you had highlighted another question, I'm happy to go back to it. Lori says, Josh, will it be 10 trials or one big trial for all? If things remain as they are right now, it's 7 counts. And my view is it's going to be one trial with 7 murders, and it's going to last for a very long time. The defense is trying to break it up. The defense is trying to say, listen, you've got some evidence that ties him in one way to 4 of the murders. Those were the first 3 or 4 charged. Those should be cut off from the other ones that have been charged later on. Their arguments on this are not very persuasive, though. Their arguments are kind of that jurors will use the evidence in stronger cases to believe that he was guilty of cases that maybe don't have as strong evidence linking him to this, and there's going to be this kind of inappropriate cross corroboration of charges here, which is oftentimes what defense attorneys will make an argument about when you've got so many different victims on one case, is that, well, some of these are weaker and some of them might be stronger, and they're going to use the stronger ones to bootstrap the weaker ones, and then he gets convicted of everything. Problem with that is that some of that they're allowed to do. Some of that you can do. Some of that you can say, well, they corroborate each other because of a similar MO, because of a similar modus operandi, because of a similar location where they recovered and how they were killed and all of these other things. And that you can use some of that evidence to say that this is, I believe, the same person involved in all of that, though you individually have to find him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt for each count. Each charge needs to stand on its own. But great question. The other reason why I think it's going to go in one big trial is just courtroom efficiency. Why put this on more than once? Let's just get it all going with all the same witnesses and investigators and everybody who's going to testify, and put it all on in one trial. All right. Anything else? We're getting to that point where I need to go say goodnight to kiddos pretty soon here. He was worried about disclosing. What is this? Well, I'll take this one last question here, and I think this has to do with this is from Special K, having to do with that juror again. I hope I'm right, Special K, about the Lori Vallow case. Isn't that jury misconduct? Yes. Yes, it is. Does that mean that man will get in trouble if it's true? And again, I don't want to be throwing this poor gentleman under the bus if we're just misinterpreting what he's saying, but you hear Judge Koenig every single day ask the question, have you guys stayed out of the news? Have you guys stopped, avoided reading stuff? But, I think what you're seeing here is assuming that he had learned about it. There's two ways this could have happened. One, it could have been him searching for it and looking for it, which would absolutely be juror misconduct. And I think ripe grounds for a mistrial, and not a mistrial, but a retrial, a new trial in her case. Or it could have been inadvertent. And then the question becomes, well, how much of a role did that play in your deliberations? Did you share that information with anyone else? All of this other kind of stuff. And I think what we're realizing too is these types of inadvertent discoveries of things, especially on high profile cases, are in my view going to become far more common. It used to be that you would tell jurors, don't read the newspaper. And that was probably enough to cut them off from the news. Please don't watch your nightly news, and please don't read the newspaper. Now we live in a day or an age where I have this thing barking at me all day long and sending me push notifications of news that I'm not even asking for. So if you're a juror and doing your best to avoid stuff, sometimes it just gets thrown in your face without warning. And I think these kinds of disclosures may become more of an issue as media and technology continues to advance. But the more I say that, I'm starting to sound very old-fashioned and grumpy. Anyhow, let's get to some announcements before I let you all go. You've been so fantastic for sticking around. I want to thank Scott again for being here tonight. What you missed on Monday, we had the latest in our conversation series with Mark Bowden from the Behavior Panel. That guy's a fascinating dude, and you guys should definitely go check out that episode if you haven't already. I could have talked to him for hours. He's just inspirational, and he's you talk about a speaker that you hang on their every word. He's one of them, and we talked a lot about that. What does that mean to communicate with people effectively? And then he talks about how that led him to the Behavior Panel and everything else. So please check it out. Stay tuned this week. All week, we have launched our brand new Courtroom Confidential live trials channel. So check it out. We will include the links for where you guys can go and subscribe. And the whole point behind this was we wanted to have a place where our community could go and watch these things and enjoy and chat amongst each other. And I jump in and out where I can, either on screen or off screen in the chat. And many of you have been enjoying it, and we encourage you all to be there. And that's where we will be covering the Karen Reed trial, gavel to gavel, and whatever other trials we have coming up. Just kind of a new place for you to go to hang out and catch up on these cases. Saturday, we've got our weekly roundup coming up as always, so check that out. And then this Sunday is going to be a new Sunday Fun Day. So please go and leave us a message. Go to thecourtroomconfidential.com. I usually pull this up, and I'm late in doing it again, but I'm going to do it anyways. Go to thecourtroomconfidential.com. Here it is here. Click on send us a voice message, and that will pop up this box where you can leave a voice message for us, and we will be answering all of those on Sunday. We already have quite a few, but we want more. We want more. So please leave us those voice messages. They've really been a treat. I could not be happier with how this whole new experiment of ours has turned out, because the questions that you guys ask are incredible. And it's got us, last week we talked about Lizzie Borden. Wait a minute, I'm butchering that name. Lizzie Borden. And before that, it was Charlie Manson. And before that, it was Karen Reed and Brian Koberger and everything else going on. But it's a really fun way to talk about a lot of different subjects. We missed last week for Easter. We've got, yes, Pammy, I do. We've got a new one coming up this Sunday. So please check it out. And then on Monday, we have our new Courtroom Confidential conversation series, and that is going to be taking place with Beth Karras. You guys know Beth. She has been around for 30 plus years as a legal reporter. And we sat down and had an incredible conversation about her entire career. She started out as a prosecutor in Manhattan, and then how she got poached from there to start out on this fledgling new network that nobody had ever heard of called Court TV, and how that just turned her life into an absolute adventure. So she walks us through all of that. And I think you guys are really going to enjoy it. And then one last announcement before I thank all of our brand new members. I'm going to drive Kaylin nuts here because I got to go back to this, but go to thecourtroomconfidential.com and click on the shop. And here's all our brand new merch that we've been working on so hard. So we've got new colors for shirts, and women's shirts and V-neck t-shirts and new hats. Where's this hat's very cool, the denim one. All a bunch of new stuff that we're very proud of, including I'm wearing one of them here tonight. How do I show this to everybody without messing everything up? And there I did. I messed it up. This is one of our brand new colors and in time for spring. So please check that out. All right, everybody. Thank you to our new members, Alicia Reed, Donna Howie, Dr. AI, C. Simon, Lindsay Crates, Lynn Keeble, and Christy Kotu. You guys are all wonderful. You all decided to join up at our membership, which again, you can find at thecourtroomconfidential.com by clicking on Become a Member and find out about all of the perks of that. I'm tired. This was fun. Thank you again to Scott. Thank you to Joe Schmo for letting us use that clip. Thank you to TU Toys for this wonderful dumpster fire. You guys are all fantastic, and thank you all for being here tonight. This was fun. We will see you all again soon.